We extend our gratitude to the non-permanent members of the Security Council for the initiative that they have demonstrated and their insistence on tabling a draft resolution of the Security Council with a focus on the humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip. The Russian Federation supported this document, which contains key elements for a prompt resolution: an immediate and unconditional ceasefire, the release of all hostages held by Hamas, the lifting of the brutal humanitarian blockade of Gaza, and the delivery of safe and unimpeded access to those in need. And this is something which we consistently called for from the very outbreak of the escalation of the Palestine-Israeli conflict on the 7th of October 2023. And as the results of today's vote demonstrated, this is the very bedrock for resolving the crisis around Gaza, which the overwhelming majority of the international community stands ready to support today. Unfortunately, today, during the 10,000th meeting of the Security Council, we have borne witness to the latest, the 7th veto exercised by the U.S., which once again blocked the adoption of a resolution which could have halted the bloodletting. Behind these figures carry tragic symbolism. So long as Washington does not change the lens through which it regards the crisis in Gaza, so long as multilateral diplomacy at the United Nations is seen there as an obstacle, not as a critically important instrument, there will be no breakthrough on Middle East settlement achieved. The UN Security Council will remain a witness to the catastrophe, paralyzed not by any of its structural problems, but paralyzed by but rather by the absence of will of one single delegation. We call upon our U.S. colleagues to acknowledge the fact that their declared quiet diplomacy on the ground, as they call it, is undermined not by the sensible voices of the international community, including in this chamber, but it is undermined by the concrete action of its Israeli ally, which was starkly attested to by the aggressive attack by West Jerusalem against the sovereign state of Qatar as one of the main mediators in the negotiations process. This was a blow, essentially, to the very idea of attaining an agreement. It discredited any assertions that Israel was willing to embrace diplomacy and reach a deal. Now, accusing Hamas of undermining this, as the U.S. colleagues continue to do so, is utterly absurd. Against the backdrop of these appalling actions of Israel against Qatar and the launch of Israel's operation for the full-scale seizure of Gaza City, this is fraught with the fact of Palestinian civilian casualties. The inaction by the Security Council stands in stark contrast with the demand for justice, which is heard in the streets of many peaceful capitals, in many of the world's capitals, including in New York, where ordinary citizens are taking to the streets and against the conflict in Gaza. And this call must be heeded. Against this backdrop, what carries key significance is the resumption next week in New York of the International High-Level Conference on Middle East Settlement. We trust that the results of this conference will have a practical and constructive significance and will breathe new life in the formula of two states for two peoples, for which there was no alternative, and there is no alternative. We call upon the United States and Israel to join this process and not, as was the case in the past, to turn their backs to the international community, getting in the way of its efforts to reach a solution for this harrowing regional crisis. And in the same vein, we are appalled at attempts by the U.S. to leverage visa procedures for pushing through their own political interests. We call upon Washington to reconsider its decision denying visas for members of the Palestinian delegation to participate in high-level week of the General Assembly. Distinguished colleagues, even if today's attempt failed, this does not mean we need to throw in the towel. We stand ready to act, and we will continue to convey our consistent position in this regard as long as is necessary. We cherish the hope that the other sensible members of the Security Council are focused on the same, for without a just and lasting solution to the Palestinian problem and without respect for the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people, it is not possible to achieve a lasting resolution to the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, a genuine peace and stability in the Middle East. We trust that such sensible members will ultimately count number 15, but not 15 minus 1. Thank you.
$25 करोड़ गरीब गरीबी को परास्त करके बाहर निकले।
For the good of our nation, let's work together and let's truly make America great again.
The fastest news breaks.
Requested PM saying that we will have to speak to Putin and to Zelensky.
The biggest news makers.
The relationship with India is probably the most important bilateral relationship the U.S. will have for the rest of this century.
The capital delivered quite an election result today.
Expert analysis.
The million-dollar question today is how to stop this dance of death.
Ground reports.
I'm standing at the crossroad of the Kumbh Mela. Behind me are more than 100 entry guards.
Long-form interviews.
Exclusionary politics is reflected in Manipur case as well. You don't bother because this is a small state.
Deep dive into burning issues.
It's often said DRC could be the richest country in the whole world. It's because of what sits underneath.
Why exactly did the US topple the Sheikh Hasina government?
HT videos. We don't just break news, we break it down.